The 2026 World Economic Summit at Davos has just closed after a turbulent and trying week for the world's powerful. Hundreds of leaders and businessmen queued to hear Donald Trump's rambling economic speeches and his wandering eye for other sovereign states' territories. But Donald Trump was not the only bull in the china shop. Prime Minister Mark Carney and President Emmanuel Macron also had their flair with their strong speeches and shades respectively. This year's Davos centered around the crumbling of the post-war rules-based order, weathered in its 8th decade by President Trump's isolationist policies. As the world's superpower changes, so too will its lower leaders, and this problem was at the forefront of all those gathered at Davos and listening in.
Previous assumptions are not as stable as we thought, and, for example, that complicates the understanding of settled Western borders.
Whilst geopolitics dominated the forum, Davos is first and foremost an economic event. In the past, it is focused on sustainability and tackling global inequalities. This year, however, whilst major companies like Meta and banks like JP Morgan continue to strut their stuff in expensive showrooms, the question was not where to invest, but how to grapple in a new world of risk and unreliability.
The world economy, the worldwide trade is one that it's one that we can avoid warfare, because once each country is rely on each other, they are not getting in a war because they're gonna break each allies and trust and economic benefit and public benefits and so on. So that I think we have to think, and the thing we have to do is to carry on to make sure every countries are getting involved to worldwide free trade.
Davos saw a repeat of the Trump inauguration, as major tech companies and puppy dog world leaders turned out in droves to support the Trump line. But Mark Carney was the star of the week, giving a template of strength to all middle powers still committed to the international order. His example, echoed in spirit by some CEOs like Jamie Dimon and EU Chief von der Leyen, poses a path away from Trumpian politics.
I think they really need to consider flexibility because there's so much risk nowadays. Economies are so interconnected. It takes just the smallest change to throw everything off balance. And so they need to be willing to adapt to that. I think it's much less about knowledge nowadays. Employers don't want to hear about what you already know because, frankly, they're going to have to teach you how they do things and how they want things done. And so, yeah, it's much less about knowledge, much more about being able to adapt to what the industry wants, what the employer wants, and being willing to learn.
As Davos wrapped up, many world leaders complained that only a year or two ago they were discussing how to solve the great social and humanitarian concerns of the age. This week, they talked of only war, trade, and breakdown in the system.
They should start working together, for example, like the EU in its initial days, with things such as this expansion of security or free trade agreements. And, for example, Canada could be added to the EU in some form of agreement.
From Trumpian diatribes to a Canadian way forward, Davos this year will certainly want to remember. For those economics and politics students hoping to work in the international arena in the future, this year may mark a high water mark for Trumpian politics. Regardless, as the year unfolds, politicians, reporters, and journalists will be sure to look back on the strong speeches made this year. I'm Will Hall, reporting from Warwick Journalism.